All right. You just shared your beautiful posters. I'm sad that I don't get to see your beautiful artwork. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of go over these, make sure you understand it. And then we'll talk about cognitive therapy, a little bit, kind of wrap up some other ones. And then the next day you'll have your quiz, and we'll talk about biomedical therapy. And then that's it. Okay? So real quick, just so you know, these first two, so this is behavior therapy, right? Trying to change a behavior. If you remember back first semester, we talked about behaviorism and learning, and that was kind of classical conditioning and operant conditioning. So that's what we're coming back to, those two ideas. The first two on this list, exposure and aversive, those are both classical conditioning. And then operant is operant. Cool. Okay, so as a reminder, as a throwback, classical conditioning, Pavlov, what were they conditioned to? They were conditioned to salivate to a bell. Remember with classical conditioning, it's kind of a natural association that you learn. It's not like punishments and rewards and you're doing something to learn this. It's a natural associations that you kind of get caught up into. So let's say that if you have a disorder, there's a behavior, and that some things naturally trigger it. The idea for classical conditioning is, well, how do we retrain them to get rid of that behavior? And so this is called counter conditioning. And it's like you're doing the opposite. You're getting rid of that old behavior and replacing it with something new. So yeah, conditions a new response to replace the old behavior. All right? And there's two ways they do it, exposure therapy and aversive conditioning. But just in general, both of these, they are about hopefully classically pairing, associating two things together. Alright, so the first one, exposure therapy, is exactly what it sounds like, is that you have anxieties or fears, and the goal is to expose them slowly so that they can overcome it. This could be like a social anxiety, a phobia. Those are the big things that these are for. All right, here's a vocab word for you. Systematic desensitization. If you've heard the word, like, our culture is becoming so desensitized to, like, dead bodies because there's so many movies out there and crime shows. And so that idea of being desensitized is the goal here with exposure therapy, too. You're afraid of something, you want to desensitize, kind of numb you a little bit to that. Systematic means to do it in a very specific, structured way. Okay? Alright, so how do they do it? The whole goal of systematic desensitization is to do it gradually. If somebody's scared of snakes, you not just want to throw them in a pit of snakes, right? If they are scared of flying, you want to strap them down and make them fly. That would scar them, right? So instead what they do is they kind of come up with this fear hierarchy, and I have it on here somewhere. Fear hierarchy is basically the therapist would sit down with the patient and come up with this hierarchy of things that would scare them a little bit, kind of slowly work up to the behavior that you actually want. So here, you think about a spider, right? Because so you would start with the therapist, and a key part here, where's my mouse, is that relaxed environment. You don't want crazy stuff going on, maybe even like calm music in an office. Relaxed environment. So they would guide you through these, not all in one day, right? Might take days, weeks, months, hopefully not years, but I guess it could. Think about a spider. Alright? And then now let's look together at a picture of a spider. And then let's look at it in a closed box. And then you hold the box. And it crawls on your desk, all the way to you crawling your bare arm. Now, I don't want that to happen. Okay, so I don't have a phobia, but I don't want a spider on me. Yeesh. Anyway. Alright, so that's systematic desensitization. Okay? Another kind of a little bit more recent thing they do. Oh, sorry, this picture up here. That would be part of a fear hierarchy too. If you're afraid of flying, at some point, maybe in the middle or higher up, you would go sit in the cockpit and talk to a pilot and kind of reduce your fears that way. Okay, but one of kind of a newer type of exposure therapy is called virtual reality, and it's pretty cool, pretty crazy. Like the one on the left, this would be virtual reality of like flying, and that would be on your fear hierarchy somewhere. Where it's actually commonly used is the VA uses it, the Veterans Affairs. Let me show you. So a lot of soldiers we talked about have PTSD, and so here's just kind of an article on it. If you can see these pictures. So PTSD, and so what they do is try and bring them back to the places and talk through it. And it's pretty realistic looking with sounds and vibrations. They can even do smells. So I actually have a video of that. Let's watch that. Hopefully it's loud enough.
The Veterans Administration estimates that 15% of Iraq War veterans have experienced some form of post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is treatable. The key is talking with someone about it. Soldiers with PTSD are typically treated with some form of talk therapy and, if necessary, antidepressant medication. The military is also working on a new kind of treatment that's based on a popular video game. It's called Virtual Iraq, and it allows soldiers to relive their combat experiences, often in excruciating detail. 360MD Dr. Sanjay Gupta visited a test site to see for himself how it works.
I was experiencing the reality of war. But in fact, it was virtual reality of war.
Helpless. Totally helpless and really, really scared. Because I thought I was going to die. I didn't want to die like that.
I wasn't ready for what would happen. It was perhaps as unnerving, as intense, and as disturbing an experience as I could imagine.
Every time I hear a new noise, I can feel my heart starting to pound. I have a little bit of shakes with my hands.
Here at the Naval Medical Center in San Diego, therapists use video game technology to help Iraq vets overcome PTSD. They take the vets back virtually to the place where their trauma began. It's an electronic deja vu. They feel as if it's real, the sights, sounds, vibrations, even the smells of the Iraq War, but in a safe environment. I experienced it for myself with the help of Dr. Mary Rose Girardi at Emory University in Atlanta, one of the therapy's test sites. I was quickly brought back to my time covering the war in Iraq.
Right now, you're sitting in the Humvee. I'd like you to just move ahead slowly.
Wow. Now
You can certainly stand up if you'd like, but please be careful. Now, as we go along, what I can do is add stimuli along the way that hopefully will elicit some of your specific memory. For instance,
helicopters flying overhead.
I'm going to do something that's a little bit more disturbing.
That is really frightening. You have no idea what's happening right now. Just two of our vehicles that just look like they exploded. We can't tell if our vehicles are trying to get out of there as quickly as possible. I could feel my heart rate just starting to down. Because I just took some gunfire. More gunfire.
Now, I'd be asking you if you were working on a specific memory to be recounting your memory and confronting that memory.
Well, there's one time when we were driving along and all of a sudden our convoy came under fire.
What happened next?
It was nighttime, so all these tracer fire, I guess, hitting the front of the convoy in front of us. And we all just ducked down into the truck as low as we could go. You really sort of covering your head and making sure your helmet chin strap is on as tight as it can be.
What were you feeling at that point?
Helpless. Totally helpless and really, really scared. Because I thought I was going to die. I didn't want to die like that. I am very uncomfortable right now, especially as I'm trying to get this thing to get us out of here as quickly as possible. Every time I hear a new noise, I can feel my heart starting to pound. I have a little bit of the shakes with my hands.
what I would be doing also at this point, Sonia, is asking you to rate your level of anxiety on a scale from 0 to 100.
90. I don't feel good at all right now.
Okay, but the goal, as we had talked about, is to confront the fear memory in a safe place. You don't want to avoid it. Confront it and find out that you can habituate to the level of anxiety. You can be okay with it.
I have to tell you, I was stunned by my reaction. I mean, I know it's only a simulation, but my reaction was so powerful. What I didn't show you was that I went through that simulation 2 more times, and I can't say that it ever really got any easier, but I did feel more in control. And from what the psychologists tell me, that's the goal. Face your fears until you can control them, maybe even defeat them. Now, this therapy is only available on a limited basis, but it does seem to be very effective at treating our warriors who are coming home. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN, Atlanta.
Okay, so that article that I had earlier actually said, I think it was a couple years ago, but there is in 30 different veterans hospitals, so hopefully that they're getting better at spreading that out more. Pretty cool though. Okay, so that's exposure therapy. The next one's aversive conditioning. The word aversive means negative, something you don't want, right? If you're averse to something. Okay, associates an unpleasant state with an unwanted behavior, right? If you remember, well, never mind. So you're now conditioning them with something negative, all right? So that hopefully those kind of behaviors switch a little bit. So in your book it talks about painting your fingernails with a bad tasting nail polish if you bite your nails all the time, right? So replacing that with now every time you bite your nails it tastes bad, right? And so hopefully now that's your new conditioned reaction to biting your nails is blah, right? That's what alcoholics, they put nausea drugs so you throw up. So remember we talked about taste aversion with John Garcia. That's the kind of the same idea here. Is now there's something you don't want, so now you pair alcohol with throwing up, essentially. So there is a famous center. I'll show it to you. Which one is that? So yeah, okay, this is called the Judge Rodenberg Center. And it's basically a center for behavior issues. If you look down here, it's emotionally disturbed students with conduct, behavior, emotional, and psychiatric problems, as well as autism. I think I talked to you earlier about like some form of extreme autism. They go and they bang their heads on the wall or they scratch themselves. So those are behaviors that they're trying to get rid of. Well, this came into the news a couple years ago because they have different methods here. But it came into the news because one of the things they do, and the parents are aware that they're signing up their students for this, or their kids for this, but they do a shock kind of therapy. So it's an aversive stimulus, right? Anytime they do something that they shouldn't. I think it's extreme cases. So maybe if they're really banging their heads and going to injure themselves, then they would shock them. And so the goal is to associate a behavior with that shock. Well, a video got released about one of the kids with autism getting shocked and strapped down, and so a lawsuit came out. So I wanted to show you this.
Of electric shock to change harmful behaviors in children and adults with development disabilities, including autism. The method has been used for more than 20 years, and each case is approved by a state judge. But recently, the United Nations likened the method to torture, and now the FDA is considering a ban. The shock method is used in only one school, the private Judge Rodenberg Center near Boston. Anna Werner went inside to hear from those who support the method, and from others, including former student Jennifer Masumba, who told the FDA that the school has gone too far.
How many times a day do you think you were shocked?
In the beginning, I was shocked every day.
Jennifer Masumba has autism. For 7 years, she lived here at the Judge Rotenberg Center in Massachusetts, where she wore a backpack like this one, sometimes 24 hours a day. Inside is a device attached to electrodes that deliver a shock whenever a staffer presses a button on a remote carried on their belt. The center claims it stops bad or aggressive behavior.
I felt like I was being punished for being born. That's what it feels like. Because I was disabled, I was being punished.
Part of Masumba's treatment plan was for staffers to draw up a list of prohibited behaviors, ranging from headbanging to hand movements, for which she could be shocked.
I'll get like 5 or 10 shocks for just doing one thing.
What was that like?
That was like being underground in hell.
The center's use of electric shock came under scrutiny in 2012 after this videotape was presented in a court case. It showed 17-year-old Andre McCollins, seen here in the upper right-hand corner, tied to a restraint board by his arms and legs, then shocked 31 times. Andre is now 29. His mother, Cheryl McCollins, settled a lawsuit against the center, but says her son has suffered permanent damage, and she wants shock treatment outlawed.
It doesn't work. Shock them out of autism? What's that going to do? Inflicting pain. It's like you're making the injury worse.
The center says it no longer uses the restraint board in combination with shocks, but they insist a program of electric shocks they compare to a bee sting, works better than medication to stop people with severe disabilities from injuring themselves or others. They point to residents such as 20-year-old Joshua Wood, who has severe autism. His parents are Sharon and Roger Wood.
He was just going to severe rages that he could not control. He would grab his head and cry. So my daughter, ourselves, we would lock ourselves in the bedroom and just hope that Josh wouldn't hurt himself.
So when they talk about parents being desperate, I mean, you evidently know exactly what that feels like.
You have to understand the entire journey. From day one, as a parent, you do everything imaginable, unimaginable, whatever. I mean, sometimes you grasp at straws.
Has he told you what it's like?
He's nonverbal.
Have a hug?
High five, everybody. All right.
Joshua's parents say he's now able to participate in activities like this lunch set up by the school.
I was just so thrilled to see the difference in him and to be able to see him smile that I was just like, this is a godsend.
As he ate, a staffer with a remote control for the shock device stood nearby.
Have you seen him get shocked?
No.
Neither of you.
No, we've seen him like right after, and he's been totally fine, like when we've come to visit the school or come to pick him up.
Jennifer Masumba says parents don't see everything that happens at the center. She says shocks were often given at random, and she says her own mother did not know she went through experiences similar to that seen on the video of Andre McCollins before she left in 2009. Can you describe it for me?
It's so scary. I would ask God to make my heart stop, because I didn't want to live when that was happening to me. I just wanted to die and make it stop.
Do you think that the students fear the shock?
No,
I don't.
Glenda Crooks is the center's director.
When you put that device on them, they're not hurting themselves anymore, they're not hurting other people anymore, and their affect it just changes. Like, no, I don't fear it, but they're afraid of that.
But it is painful.
It is painful. It is painful.
And you think they don't feel that?
I don't. You need to experience the day-to-day goings on, and it happens so few and far between. It's very rare that someone gets an application. They know what they get the application for, so it's not a fearful thing.
It's easy to control people when you hurt them. It's easy. That's all they've ever done.
Masumba now lives at a group home in Florida, where her therapy includes playing the piano and positive feedback reinforcement.
What's become of Jennifer Masumba's case?
Well, Scott, Jennifer Masumba is now suing the Judge Rotenberg Center. We asked center officials about her case. They told us that she did well there, and in fact sent
positive emails to the center after leaving in 2009, but Jennifer Masamba says it took her 2 years to process her experience there and recover from what she calls abuse.
Fascinating story. Thank you, Anna.
Okay. So, pretty interesting stuff there. But yeah, that is... Oops, let's go.
Positive emails.
Hold on. Okay. That is aversive therapy, and it's out there and it's used. It's got its positives and negatives for sure. Okay. All right, the last one for behavior therapy is operant conditioning. And just this one's very straightforward. Just like we talked about operant with Skinner, you've got the Skinner box, right? And they've got rewards, and hopefully those rewards guide the rats to the behavior. And the other side of that would be punishments, okay? So with therapy, you got, I know you looked at this already, but giving positive reinforcements for the correct behavior. And schizophrenics, when they stop acting with those behaviors of rocking or seeing things, they would get positive reinforcement. Same thing could be for OCD, anything. And there's this word, a token economy. You earn a token for exhibiting a desired behavior. I mean, this is pretty basic. I remember I was in speech class growing up, couldn't say my R's, and I would get, like, if I filled up my cup with beans over time, and I would practice, I would get a token there. And then, long story. Okay, so that's behavior therapy, changing behaviors, right? Okay, the last one of the psychotherapy that we're going to talk about is cognitive therapy. And based on what you know of cognitive, what is the goal? To change your thoughts, right? Change your thoughts. And if you think about all the disorders we talked about, what disorders stick out to you with needing to change thoughts? Depression and anxiety, usually. Those are the two. So the goal is to teach them new ways of thinking, and yeah, depression and anxiety are really the ones that the thoughts really control a lot of it. Okay, so here's kind of what they do here. Let's say you lose your job and you have your belief, I'm worthless, it's hopeless, and you go into depression. Well, they are trying to change right there, that part of I'm worthless. So instead, my boss is a jerk, I deserve something better, I didn't do my best this time, but I'm capable of doing more. So that's the goal. Now, it's a lot easier said than done, right? To just change your thoughts. That's easy. Remember my friend, my coworker, just calm down. Just calm down, you won't be anxious. That's ridiculous. So it's a long, hard, difficult process. Okay, so here's the kind of, usually I make somebody role play and read this for me. So the patient would say, oh, by the way, Beck, he is kind of known for a lot of research in psychology, or in cognitive therapy. Okay, patient, I agree with the descriptions of me, but I guess I don't agree that the way I think makes me depressed. So the therapist would say, well, how do you understand it? I get depressed when things go wrong, like when I fail a test. How can failing a test make you depressed? Well, if I fail, I'll never get into law school. So here's really kind of going at their thoughts here. So failing the test means a lot to you. But if failing a test could drive people into clinical depression, wouldn't you expect everyone who failed the test to have a depression? Did everyone who failed get depressed enough to require treatment? No, but it depends on how important the test was to the person. Right, and who decides the importance? I do. And so what we have to examine is your way of viewing the test and how it affects your chances of getting into law school. Do you agree? Okay, so really challenging the thought process. So, again, I think I talked about this when I went with my friend to her anorexia psychologist. It really, really kind of went at the thoughts and how do we get your thoughts to be different. And so when she went to inpatient, she had to have a journal every day. and write down her thoughts while she was eating. And then later the therapist would look at the thoughts. And so, for example, she says, this meal has so many calories and I'm going to gain weight, I'm going to be fat and whatever. The therapist would say, okay, well, let's look at cognitively, right? How many calories is this meal, right? And how many calories are you burning? And will that actually, with your metabolism and blah, blah, blah. So really trying to change those irrational thoughts. And unfortunately, this can take years. But that is cognitive therapy. Now, kind of a play off of this is cognitive behavior therapy. And really, it's just, this kind of makes sense. It's saying that our thoughts are connected to our behavior. And our behavior affects our feelings. And our feelings, it's just, so how do we need to connect these two things. So we need to change both, right? And so basically, it just combines both goals with cognitive and behavior therapy. Let's change your thoughts, and then also change your behaviors, and hopefully kind of together that will help. So for example, social anxiety, they would go through the cognitive process that we already talked about, and then they have like this homework assignment where they have to go practice approaching people in public. So there's putting the behavior. OCD, instead of going to wash their hands anytime that desire comes up, they go for a walk. So changing behavior with it. All right? Okay, and then this is just some like other types of therapy here, but group therapy, I know you've heard of it. When you think of group therapy, what comes to mind? For me, it's, hi, Adam. Welcome to AA. But it's usually 6 to 9 people. There's a 90-minute session. And the benefits, first of all, it costs less, right? But a big part of it's knowing others have similar problems. I know this was a big part of her anorexia inpatient treatment, where all these other women struggling with anorexia at the same time. I have another friend who is a, I don't know what her title is, but she works with heroin addicts. And so she's in charge of group therapy with them. All right. Family therapy. I like that picture in the bottom left. But family therapy is basically saying that if someone has a disorder in your family, it affects everybody. And how other people treat you in your family could exacerbate it, right? Or could hopefully help it. And so it's treating the family as a unit, as a system and everybody in that system is responsible for contributing to their growth or to really them struggling more. Okay? And a lot of times, family members don't know how to deal with it. I remember that my friend's mom said, oh, is she exercising too much again? So she doesn't know how to. That's not the right thing to say to her. Okay? And this is another random one. Light exposure therapy. So, what disorder, nah, you might know it, but I don't know if you've heard of seasonal affective disorder, but well, no, this is later in the year, but right now where I'm filming this is January, and our days are shorter and it's darker, and what happens a lot in the winter is people get, depression rises, and that's called seasonal affective disorder. Form of depression, and what they found is, like, in people in Alaska, they have like full days of darkness. Maybe not full days, but not very much light. And they have found results here with this artificial light, and they found if you sit in front of it, that it actually helps your levels of depression. Pretty crazy. Light exposure therapy. All right. Okay, so just kind of looking at all this psychotherapy in general, who do people turn to? Mostly physicians, psychiatrists, right? To get help. But then you also get your other mental health, your other psychologists. And then other professionals like clergy or maybe school counselors or something like that. In your opinion, what do you think is the most used? And the answer is cognitive. About 50% is cognitive. And then look down here, it's psychoanalytic, 28%. I don't know if that would have been on your next list or not. But it makes sense that cognitive is probably the most, right? Really, thought processes are behind so many of these disorders. And this is just saying that, in general, people that actually go and get treatment were 80% better than untreated ones. The hardest part is getting people in the door. If they're struggling, it's that choice of kind of laying down your pride and going to get help. Okay? And then that's it. Tomorrow, the next day we'll look at biomedical. Alrighty. Peace out.